Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fortnightly IAB webinar. I hope everyone's got a nice warm cup of tea and comfortable for an hour of amazing content that we've got lined up for you. We are talking about search this webinar. We don't actually, as the IAB, probably talk about search as much as we should, and I'll give a bit of background on what we're going to talk about today and I guess why we should be focusing on it. Couple of housekeeping rules for the session today. We've got a lot of great content to get through. We would love to have some questions thrown through, tricky and friendly and otherwise, through for our wonderful speakers who are here. We will get to them at the end in our Q&A, so pop them through as you think of them, and we'll get through hopefully most of them at the end. Also feel free to give a shout out to any of the people and pop some love in the chat box. But we'll get into it. So for those who don't know me, my name is Gay Leroy, and I'm lucky enough to be the CEO of the IAB in Australia. And today I'm joined by a great lineup of people. You can see their faces, hopefully, both in little boxes and on the screen there. We're going to have 4 short presentations from our experts here today, and then we're going to all come together for a panel to chat about some of the topics that we've covered and your questions as well. The flow today, we're going to start with Krish Raja, who's General Manager of Captify in Australia and a long-term friend of the IAB. He's going to be talking a little bit about search intelligence and its role in programmatic advertising. So some new exciting ways that we can enhance media buying in that area. Then we're going to hand over to Paul Sinkinson. Again, everyone is a long-term friend of the IAB, but a long-term friend of the IAB. He's going to really talk about search in the media mix, its role, the synergies between other media, ROI, all that good proof point stuff from the wonderful client data that Analytic Partners brings together so well. That fits really lovely into Jess Williams from Google, who's going to help us understand the consumer journey and the role that search can play to help consumers navigate and I guess close on those important purchases that they're making. And then at the end, we've got Louisa Manel from Reprise, who's going to really talk about it's all exciting, but her stuff in particular will be exciting, looking at, I guess, the evolution and growth of the search market and how it's meaning more than, I guess, what we think of as traditional search. So going into commerce world, visual world, and just as an agency, how they bring that all together for clients. So lots of stuff to get through. Anyone who has missed our previous webinars, we have, I think, and I've got to count because I'm making it up every week, but it's around 55 webinars on pretty much every topic across the industry. So they're all there for your enjoyment and also for your teams if they want sort of upskilling on different areas. Why should we talk about search a bit more? Search is and has been, I guess, the largest part of the Australian digital advertising market and most markets across the world. So looking at 46% share of the dollars spent in digital advertising across the market. We do spend a lot of time, I guess, looking at the sort of broad display area, which is where, you know, we do spend a lot of time looking at sort of the innovation there, but search is a space that obviously is key to a lot of clients' strategies and how that works across digital advertising, but across traditional advertising as well is incredibly important. So you can see that huge growth that we've had in market there. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Krish, and he's going to talk us through some of his information on search intelligence. Over to you, Krish.
Oh, there you go. Thank you very much, Kay. Sorry about that. As Gay's run through, search advertising is the largest bit of our industry, and it's for very, very good reason. It sits on top of the most honest data set that there is as to what we all want as consumers and the moments that we want it in. So, we're not even mature when it comes to breaking the cuffs off search data yet. Over the next few years, retail media, e-commerce, they'll continue to pull in search in new directions. I'm sure some of the panelists will go through that in a bit later. So to kick off this session, I don't necessarily want to talk about search advertising. I want to talk about search data. I want to talk about the different types of search data out there and how different inputs can lead to very different outputs for marketers. And if the data set is that honest and that powerful, it does sort of make sense that it's going to be quite useful across the entire media mix. Yeah, we all know that the data space is shifting quite quickly beneath our feet. We're moving into an era of heavy focus on data quality, first-party data sets. And we're pretty excited about this with at Captify with our direct publisher integrations. I won't introduce or do a Captify pitch or anything like that, but you should get a flavor of what we're about throughout the presentation with the content. But look, I think as a result of this new focus on first-party data and data quality as an industry, I think we're going to be able to start being able to be a lot clearer as to what's powering your media strategy. And I think search is going to be an awesome way of connecting digital user journeys in a way that we can't actually do with current brand metrics or digital metrics. So I just want to start by opening up the definition of search, because right now, when you think of search, you probably mostly think of the one Google bar. And Google is a hugely valuable player in our industry, but there's more. There's a lot more. Search is actually everywhere. It's every user input into the internet, not just the one box. Consumers make billions of searches all over the web looking for information they trust on, professionally curated sites, from e-commerce sites, travel aggregators, price comparison, review sites. And I really want to focus on publisher on-site search and its sort of underrated value in our industry. So why does it matter? Why does publisher on-site search matter? Firstly, it comes with all that explicit nature of what we love about search signals, such as the fact that they're honest and truthful and not assumed, where people tell you directly what they want or need. But it's also a really great indicator of consumer intent, because you tend to be a step further in your journey and your search can be contextualized. So for example, if you're searching for Apple on a tech site, it comes with a fairly finite definition. It's not a fruit. The quality of the premium content does attract that level of trust in the consumer, so they trust the information they're going to get when they're searching for it. And then lastly, the different types of searches outside of a search engine tend to give different layers into consumer journeys, which is what I really want to focus on in this session. So, don't think of one search bar, think of many, multiple millions of search bars. And so let's go into the different types. Search doesn't typically live at the top of the funnel. For years, it's sort of been pigeonholed at the bottom to steal the last click in marketing, and the top of the funnel sort of stayed a little bit differently accountable in that context, or a bit further away from being able to look at sales. So this is why it's interesting to look at the different types of searches that take place. Search can show you a moment, a trigger, it can show you research. And if you look at the speed and connectedness of searches, it can give us even more layers of intent and show us further up the funnel. So let's go through the different types. I'll try and give a couple of examples from my own head as we go. So that first column there, explorative. So this is the one that's most likely to power contextual. So, you're reading something and you make a search for some content. I just moved house, so I looked at some stuff around how to configure my living room for a TV placement, to place the TV in the living room. That might be an explorative search. The next one is investigational. So you're curious, you're a bit vague at this point, but you want more info. So last week, I was looking at places in the city to park my scooter, and I can definitely tell you it's slim pickings, but that's an investigational search. Informational, so this is actually my most popular type. So my most recent informational search was, is Teflon bad for your health? It's a bit weird, but I'm probably a bit weird. So that's an informational one. I want informational about a certain topic, and I'm curious. Verticalized. So as mentioned, I'm moving house, so I'm searching for a kitchen island at the moment on Bunnings, highly verticalized. And then the next one is comparative. So, price comparison sites are an obvious one for this type. I want to compare before I pull the trigger on that purchase. And then finally, purchase, which is this is pretty much the one that most of our industry assumes that all of search is, which is right at the bottom of the purchase funnel. So I finally decided that Teflon is not bad for my health, and I want a Teflon pan. So this grid here kind of shows us why a broader view is needed in our industry, because travel intent doesn't just happen on a travel site. It's interconnected to triggers that might happen on a clothing website or a health website. And no doubt, I'm sure you're going to hear in the next session about how everything is interconnected. And so, for me, connected searches are far more valuable than the individual keyword. And altogether, different search types can help account for the whole consumer journey. So, naturally, then the engine that processes that data has to sort of take that into account. And if we had if all we had was a massive pool of keywords on its own, it would just be search retargeting, and that's just not enough for the consumer journey. It's not enough for scale. It's not enough for privacy. So that's why connected searches are really important here. Connections between the meanings, the users, and the pages behind the searches, and all across the internet. And that's really where the outputs lie, is, finding out that your golf search is definitely about a car and not about golf clubs, or finding out that your home reno searcher actually wants a Samsung phone as well, or mapping the purchase search to the moment or the event that caused it further up. So most of the challenges that you see on this slide, they can't be answered when you're just looking at one search term on its own. And it certainly won't give you the scale you need on higher impact media formats, and it probably won't be population relevant either. So we need connections. So that's kind of what search intelligence is about. It's about connected searches, scoring it by user or page, and so you can enable profiling of audiences and planning it at all phases of the consumer journey, and also identifying triggers at each stage. So, for example, a calendar moment like the Super Bowl can be mapped through its search output very differently to a sporadic moment, like if there's a massive storm or something. But also, conversely, that can also be separated from a real life moment, like an engagement party that's about to occur. And then, once you have all these different types of search data, marketers can start to then use them in ways that are not bottom of funnel, that are not reliant on click-based attribution models, and not reliant on cookies either. So here are some thought starters. You can see them on the page there. One I might point out now is syncing against channels like TV or outdoor. So search data can enable a marketer to look at ad frequency, creative, and spot times to figure out when to drive higher search uplift or readjust their brand tactics automatically with search volume index as an input and as a signal for that. And broadly, I think that's got to be the goal for a marketer, to be able to use search signals as a benchmark for business success. And in my opinion, because search data is able to be interpreted so closely to business outcomes, it's good for entire business strategies, not just media. So understanding product attributes, flight path interest for airlines, or the moments that your brand becomes famous or infamous. It's real information, and it's that you can use to power business decision making in all aspects. So a really quick use case. So Bose were preparing a new product launch, the Sleep Buds. I've actually got a pair of these because I get woken up by snoring all the time. It's my own snoring. Bose basically needed to shift their perception and find the audiences that they needed, which their traditional headphone audience just wasn't going to cut it. So in this case, search data does something different. It does something that other data sets aren't quite capable of. It sort of expands Bose's pre-launch target audience by identifying audience who might be receptive to Sleep Buds. So you've got your stressed executives, you've got your business travelers, and you've got people like my sister who just got a new puppy and wasn't told how hard it is to have a new puppy. There's a lot of different non-obvious audiences that come up there. And you can't really do this with other data types, not in that same honest way. And then the rest of the idea is that you use this information at the top of the funnel so that your lower funnel tactics benefit from it. So, that in a nutshell, I guess, is the idea that I wanted to convey today, is how search signals can increase the amount of users with intention to convert. So your pool at the bottom benefits, your lower funnel tactics benefit from having a better top of funnel activation. And And how do you measure that? How do you know, or how do you provide value adding metrics? Brands should be able to expect metrics. I think that they understand and are simple from search. I think that's the beauty of search data, is that it's ubiquitously understood, that everyone gets it, everyone understands what the different methodologies behind search metrics are. And I dare say we'll talk about kind of share of search later on as well. I'm sure we will. But if we go by this theory that all searches are as close to honest intention as you'll find, then there are a couple of metrics that are pretty simple. They're pretty well understood, and they mean a lot to a business's bottom line, like search uplift. But also, like, another way search data could be useful in a way other data sets might not be is tagging brand terms like, the brand's other products and indexing against the ad campaign. So, for example, Bose found out that their other products, like the QC35s that I'm wearing now, they were getting a higher volume of searches due to the campaign on Sleep Buds. So this is, again, really great stuff that search data can do. It's about genuine brand interest and brand momentum. And these are the things that I feel like a lot of big brands tend to score internally as well. So this is what can be really cool about search data. And so, yeah, I'll leave you there. I know we've got a Q&A later on as well, but I'll leave you there with that idea that different types of search data power different layers of media strategy up and down the funnel and across all media channels. So with that, thank you for your time, and I will hand you over to Paul Sinkinson.
Thank you, Krish. So, look, I've been asked to come along and take you through, I guess, how we see search working from its returns, but also its synergy across everything else in terms of other media vehicles. So, look, I guess the first part of this really is, kind of saying, how am I to be able to tell you what's going on, what sort of returns there are in the marketplace? So, look, let me introduce, the company to you a little bit. You can work out for yourself whether I've got any credibility to tell you how search works. Firstly, we're an independent company. We're privately owned, no external investors. We work with our clients on a long-term partnership view. You can see there with a 90% client retention rate. I'm not trying to claim in any way, shape, or form that the models are perfect. Far from it. But if the models weren't working, if we were giving recommendations that were like way off because they weren't working, clearly we wouldn't be helping our clients grow, and then they wouldn't work with us, and we wouldn't have that client retention rate. Marketing, measurement, and optimization it's the core of our business. It's what we're set up around. It's where our IP is. It's what we geek out over. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. But every one of them that we do are bespoke. They're set particularly to that client, to their data source, and to the questions that they've got. So, when I have to explain how it is that what we do, it's not like we're forcing everybody into this, like one methodology that I could easily explain to you. It's easier though to say, we're building mathematical models that work out why you sold what you sold in any one week. So, clearly, in order to be able to do that, we need to get our hands on a lot of data. So, think economic sentiment, think competitor activity, COVID testing rates, for instance, has been a big one lately. But then all of the client marketing, so pricing, distribution, all of the media, the paid, owned, and earned activity that's going through. We isolate that out. We know the profit levels that we get for the volume from the client. We know the actual spend. We can obviously divide those two out and get an ROI. Then that's what we try to optimize in the short term, but also in the long term. Now, look, clearly, if I'm going around marking everybody else's report card saying how well you're doing, external validation is something that obviously we believe in a lot. So we seek it out for ourselves as well. You can see there, Forrester, they do the largest one of these. Marketing Measurement Optimization Wave. They've called us a global leader since 2016, leader the leader in 2020. You can see Gartner as well as ICOM, the one that I'm always most proud of. We've won the hackathon both times that we went in there. So if the rest of that's kind of marketing, it's the ultimate walk-to-walk moment of having to run models and present findings during a conference. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of confidence in what we're going to be going through today, that there is some sort of robust check behind it as well as just our opinion. That opinion's based off what we call the ROI genome. It's a huge marketing database that we've been collecting for the last 20 years. There's well in excess of 25,000 studies in there, over $470 billion worth of marketing collected. The key is this is all work that's being done for clients purely with the goal of helping that client maximize their return, and that they've been working with us for a long time. So there's nothing in here, you know, like say an industry body paying us to do a study to say what are the returns looking like. That's not what it is. It's all client work based in there. So, you know, I've got no vested interest in saying whether search is done well or search is done badly. And within this is purely client-based work. So how does search look within the mix? Well, this is work that we shared the first time at the IAB Measure Up event back in 2018. And it's the short-term ROI of media in Australia. It's all indexed to TV. The reason we index it is just because, you know, different people make different profit margins, and we want to get rid of that noise. You know, like if somebody's selling a car and somebody's selling a can of baked beans, obviously it's going to be different, and that'll create distortion. So if everything's relative to TV, then it becomes about the relative performance of media. So if I was making $1 on TV, and I'll be making $3.80 on social, I'll be making 89 cents on magazines in the short term. So you can see there, paid search, 221%. So, you know, a strong performer, you know, not the strongest, but definitely a strong performer. Now, you know, sometimes there's a little bit of, you know, discussion about why these results can be different. There is actually quite a bit of consensus between, you know, the leading companies as judged by Forrester, as well as all of the academic studies that I showed at Measure Up the first time behind this approach and behind these results. So, you know, when people are working purely to maximize client ROI or purely to, you know, do academic research in peer-reviewed journals, there is a growing consensus behind this. The one caveat that I will put down is that this relies on a degree of synergy. So, you know, digital, very, very strong when there's TV and out of home in those campaigns. We kind of take that out. It's not necessarily as strong, but that's the result that we're seeing on average within Australia for the short term. Now, how's that changed over time? You know, we've been going through a massive pandemic. You'd expect it to change, right? And it definitely has. You know, you can see there TV as the first one. During that first part of the lockdown, you know, April to May, and even, you know, through to July, we saw a huge improvement in it. Obviously, you know, a lot more people at home, a lot of people pulled their advertising. So, you know, you're getting all of the benefits of increased share of voice, as well as, you know, quite a bit of bonus stock being offered out there. But the media was just really overperforming. You can see the same thing with video, but actually the same thing with pretty more or less all digital activity. Massive overperformance. No surprises, everybody stayed at home, so out of home wasn't working as well for us. But you'll notice as we go through into December, we're starting to see it return to normal. So those massive seismic changes that we saw have actually started to come back. You know, TV down to 7% as we're getting towards the end of the year, out of home coming back to normal. And we've actually seen that start to actually get back to zeros, i.e., you know, we're back into that long-term trend so far through this year. So there was a big spike, but things are starting to return to normal. But you can see search, you know, still up 5%, still doing pretty well. Now, one of the questions that I often get asked is, you know, is there a category or an industry or a vertical that search performs better in? But I'm not sure it's necessarily quite that clear cut. What we do know is that highly researched products drive much stronger ROIs for search. So, you know, normally that's big purchases, you know, think, you know, buying a new car, buying a home loan, something like that. But it's not restricted to that. It's highly researched. So, you know, even within FMCG, within a supermarket, you know, organic foods or, you know, products with a health benefit promoted on them, they can get a really high ROI. But during the pandemic, it was also everyday stuff. You know, we saw things like, you know, patio heaters, deep fryers, cooking wine up, you know, 100, 200%. So whenever people are getting into a category and are researching it like that, there's going to be a lot higher ROI coming through from your search. But if I was to think the number one thing that really makes that big change, it's dedicated online fulfillment. When you've got your own e-commerce channel, you're going to double those ROIs. So that's the thing that's going to take search. You know, you'll remember back, we saw it kind of, you know, near the top, but a mid performer. The thing that makes it the standout highest ROI that you can have is having your own e-commerce channel. So, you know, rather than sending your customers to somebody else's site to be able to do that transaction, being able to do it on your own site where you're getting those people at full profit, you know, where they're not getting shown one of your competitors or anything like that, that gives you a huge lift. It's the absolute game changer. So we've had a few clients who've kind of gone through that progression of not having e-commerce fulfillment, then bringing it in, and we've seen these time and time again. I think, one other kind of call out there is about where you're putting them. So, if you're bringing people onto your website, we definitely see that, investing in UX and improving that performance can give you a 32% kick in the ROI of your ROI, just because, you're bringing them to a nicer place. But also, just the nuts and bolts of getting that transaction done well. A 1 second delay in the loading of a mobile website can impact conversions by 20%. So making sure you understand what you're using search for, that you get the most benefit out of when you bring people to a site, that you're able to get them to transact. That's the thing that's going to make search the highest ROI that you can have. Now, I'm not sure if this is the best audience to share this slide with, but we definitely see quite a bit of a difference in the measurement of search when we run our models versus what a client might have been looking at search beforehand. You can kind of see, the two here. Part of that reason is because, there's still a lot of last click attribution out there, and clearly search tends to be one of the last clicks most of the time along the channel. So it's picking up a lot of volume from that. But also, if you're looking purely at an online measure, then you're missing the impact of a lot of things. We know for clients, if you do a massive TV campaign, then it drives more search. If you don't have that offline media and the offline activity and, price discounting and all those sorts of things within your model, then miraculously, suddenly you're going to think search is more effective. When we run it, we say, look, actually, the organic search on its own is probably driving about 50 to 60% of your total search. You can see there, TV driving 13% of it. You can see digital video driving 8% of it. You can see social media driving 8%. Display, press, out of home, radio, all driving quite a bit of the volume. But rather than seeing that as a threat, the good thing is, the ROIs that I showed you before, showing a really strong result for search, that's based on us thinking that it's driving about 60% of that search volume. So rather than thinking that, this is some sort of a threat, actually, I think it speaks to an opportunity. And it's, I feel like sometimes I'm beating one drum with this. Every Australian marketer getting better at harnessing synergy is the key behind this. As I mentioned, we saw those really high digital ROIs at the start within Australia based off that synergy with offline. You can see online traditionally a little bit higher than offline, but if you get that synergy right, you're getting a 50% lift in your ROIs. There's the extra 20% is just floating around there by getting the synergy packed out. We've often spoken about how you can do this, from a creative perspective of making sure, your digital video and your TV lines up, that, your display and your out of home using the same sort of visual thing. But how does that work with search? Well, it's exactly the same thing. It still plays through because, your TV is driving some of that search. You can see there, TV and paid search, it's a 25% extra lift on your ROIs. But it's the same with digital video. You're getting an extra 13%. So, that moving pictures, you're running those campaigns, you can see it's giving you more value to your search, which is then something you really want to think about. That and, when you're bringing people to an e-commerce facility, if search is giving you more value at those times, you want to really think about what strategy you've got in terms of, what you're prepared to bid for, what price you're prepared to pay for it, because it's giving you more value. So it's really important to kind of, link them up, but also then think about what that means for your strategy. But you can see, out of home and radio, even, offline traditional channels with no necessarily link to search, still driving 5 and 4% more return for you. You can see it's a big opportunity still for people to link them together, to not think of them as different channels, to not plan them as different channels, but to be able to bring it together to drive a lot more value for you. I basically wanted to finish that off by saying, look, search, it's a strong channel for you, but it'll be your strongest once you have your own e-commerce facilities and for higher involvement categories. But it will pay off better and better as you get better UX on the site, as you increase the performance of where you're bringing them to. Sounds very simple, but if everybody was doing it well, we wouldn't be seeing, 20 or 100, 200% uplifts. We'd be seeing, 3 or 4% little incremental lifts. So I think it's an opportunity for everybody. Search performance is heavily driven by other media channels, and getting that synergy working out is really the key to be able to maximize the returns. So I'll now hand over to Jess Williams to take you through to the next stage.
All right, here we are. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. So thanks, Paul. I'm Jess Williams. I sit on the Strategy and Insights team at Google, and I'm really excited to walk you through our research around what influences all the decisions that we make, both online and offline, and apply that back to the digital journey, and particularly search, to help everyone shape their media strategies.
Jess, sorry to jump in. We've lost your screen.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Let's try that again.
Got it.
Are we good there?
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Cool, so with that, starting with the consumer, we know that we all have a lot more information choice available to us at any given moment. So websites, blogs, social media, word of mouth, really every kind of media channel that you can imagine. And it turns out that all the information and choice that consumers want and easily can find is really complicating that path to purchase. So consumers really want the best choice for them. And the more choice there is, the hardest that this can get. So just think about picking a bottle of wine for a dinner party when there's about 100 bottles sitting in front of you. The fear of making the wrong choice can feel paralyzing. So we've called this in-between space really the moments that are between trigger and purchase, the messy middle. And really, we really wanted to rethink this and what this looks like to help really tidy it up for marketers and help simplify decisions for consumers. And so what we did in partnership with behavioral architects was study over 1 million online shopper journeys across 150 products and services globally, all in an effort to simplify that spaghetti-like messy middle based on observed decision-making. Now, through this messy middle study, we found that the purchase path is anything but linear. Really not to say that the funnel is wrong by any means. We know that it's an important tool to plan media, but it just doesn't fully capture how consumers are behaving. And what consumers are doing in that messy middle is really one of two things. So evaluating or exploring. Now, these two tasks can happen either together or apart, but according to neuroscience, they're two distinct mental processes. So first, there's exploration mode, which is the expansive mindset, and that's where we're really adding brands to our consideration set. And then evaluation mode, which is more reductive. So we're narrowing down our options. But really because of the sheer information and choice available to us and how easy it is to research, we really want to go deeper down into that infinite hole, creating that loop that you see on the page there. So the question is, how can we help consumers exit out of that loop and pick the right brand for them? Now, given that new model, we want to see how we could help consumers exit out of that infinite loop. And we did that through a series of purchase simulations. So consumers came into the study being in market for a particular category, and they told us what their first choice and second choice brands were. Then we created a platform like you see here, where we really could test those cognitive biases that could tempt that shopper away from their first choice brand to their second choice. And to do that, we use simple messaging to replicate what a consumer would naturally find as they're shopping. Now, what happened here was actually really interesting. So just when that second choice brand showed up in the simulation, on average, 1 in 3 consumers switched to their second choice brand just because it was there. So no other messaging involved. So what you're seeing here are some of the 150 categories that we tested over at the bottom. And then the dark blue is the percentage that really went for that second choice brand, which on average is about 1/3. Now, to take this further, we also want to see how those behavioral principles could tempt a shopper towards their second choice brand. So using 7 key behavioral principles, which I'll show you in a minute, but we essentially supercharged that second choice brand and then gave them a fake brand. So with no any other kind of brand knowledge involved, what would happen if we supercharged that messaging around it? And this is what happened. So what you're seeing here is what happened when shoppers had seen their second favorite brand, or sorry, their first favorite brand, excuse me, next to that fake brand with supercharged messaging. So at the bottom are the same categories, and then in green are the percent of consumers that opted for that fake brand once those nudges were applied. And on average, around 60% of consumers choose a completely fake brand based on the more compelling value proposition. So ranging from about 28% for cereal through to 87% for car insurance. And depending on who you are, that can be really exciting or a bit jarring. But regardless, it just opens up an opportunity to tweak your messaging in a more helpful way so consumers can really navigate that messy middle. Now, let's start to make this a little bit more practical. So we'll dig into a couple of examples of what this looks like for search and Google Ads, because we know that this is where consumers are actively leaning into the messy middle and using search as that critical channel to explore and evaluate the information and options that are available to them. Again, all in an effort to get the best choice for that particular consumer. So first, we know showing it matters. So we know that consumers turn to search during those moments of exploration, expecting immediate helpful responses. So the opportunity here could either be around winning share or by building a moat around your brand, given that 1 in 3 consumers will opt for that second choice just because it appeared during that moment of intent. Now, from a search perspective, this is why coverage is important. So we know that context changes around us, and of course, so do search queries as time goes on. In fact, we haven't seen 15% of the searches that come in every day because they're brand new. So the question is, how can you best cover most of those relevant terms and really squeeze the most ROI out of your media dollars, given that this changes a fair bit? Now, to help you stay on top of consumer behavior and to help you show up in that messy middle, we have a tool to help you get the most out of those search investments. So Optimization Score is a tool within Google Ads to help provide those real-time insights powered by machine learning, and it helps surface opportunities and recommendations to drive better results. So things like new trending keywords or forecasting seasonal demand opportunities, all while showing you the additional traffic that you can expect. So this really allows you to show up in those critical moments of intent and help you gain or protect valuable customers. And the good news is it works. So we've seen that advertisers who increase their score see a 10% jump in conversions. Now, the second thing we learned is that you need to be compelling, of course. So the discoveries made in the messy middle can determine the outcome of a purchase. So those really small changes can actually have a pretty significant impact. Now, done well, used objectively, used responsibly, they can be really helpful in tipping a consumer out of that infinite loop and into a purchase. So what does this look like for search? Now, remember, the simulation was all about using the most simple execution of these nudges that you see on the right-hand side of this page. So I'll take you through an example of what this looks like and walk you through how these start to play out. So here we'll look at a travel example because we're all in need of a holiday. And look, at face value, it probably looks like a stock standard ad. So you've got your brand, your headline, some snippets. We've used some extensions, which is great. And hopefully we can assume we're showing up on a generic term like hotels in Byron Bay. However, it's actually a carefully engineered piece of ad copy, supercharged with a bunch of principles of behavioral science designed to help consumers exit out of that messy middle and land on a confident choice. So to walk through this, what we have here on the left is free breakfast included. And what I'll say here is, while we may not have control over things like pricing or freebies, it's just worth kind of checking to see if any offerings can present themselves during these moments of exploration. So if an offer is a part of your value proposition, put it in there. If not, that's okay too, because there's plenty of other biases to use. Then we have some scarcity and power of now that sit within our headline, both really powerful and kind of driving that behavior. Then we have authority bias, so using that trusted expert. So industry awards are other ones that we see a lot. If we think back to our wine example, having those kind of awards on just some of that packaging can be really helpful for consumers to then pick that best bottle of wine that they can say, hey, someone else said this is a good bottle of wine as well. Next, we have category heuristics, and kind of a big term for something very simple. It essentially means just quick rules of thumb that are fairly specific to the category. So with travel, it's something around proximity usually. Now, if you have a lot of insights around your industry or your brand that can be helpful to inform anyone who's writing your ad copy of some of these heuristics, definitely share those insights across to make sure you're using this one in the best way. And then at the bottom, we have a bunch of social proofing. So star ratings, a high amount of reviews. These kind of instill a bit of trust, as well as some copy that can be pulled through dynamic targeting. Now, it's worth noting that just because social proofing might be resonating with one consumer, it may not be for another. So this is where experimenting really does come in. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we are bringing more automated ways to do this at scale, but dynamic targeting is one way to do this, as well as RSAs. Cool. So just to summarize, starting to run up on time, but there are 3 key actions over here. Now, for the first 2 points, just when you have a moment, take out your phone, do a search for your category. Think about who's showing up, and do the headlines that you're seeing across the results page all feel the same? If so, they're probably not so compelling, and that could be an opportunity to really dig in there. Now, the second one I talked about a little bit is around being experimental. This one's really important because we need to continuously test, reevaluate, and refine really how we're showing up to our audiences. Messaging that worked last month might be different from what will work next month. And as individuals, we're going to be responding differently to these biases. So it's best to have a lot of these up your sleeves, just to be able to kind of see what works, what doesn't work as much. And again, it's more of that individual perception of what's going to drive that next action. At the end of the day, the messy middle just isn't going to be solved for. So we need to keep adapting and helping people navigate that to be more helpful as they go through their purchase decisions. I mean, at the end of the day, consumers do need more help more than ever, even though we have all that information and options. It's all about weeding through it. So the messy middle is even messier as we're looking through new information and different information. So as the context around us changes, so does that information. And we all know that we're spending more time online as well. So marketers can use these digital tools to guide consumers towards that confident choice. And again, using experimentation as a way to do that as well. So that is the messy middle in a nutshell. We have a 98-page ebook on messy middle available on Think with Google, as well as a couple of other articles and videos if anyone wants more detail on that, and we'll put that link into chat. And I think we have Q&A later, but I will hand it over to Louisa.
Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen. You're getting a preview of my key takeouts then. All right, so I am going to talk you through how search has grown over the last year and some emerging trends that we can be thinking about as investment opportunities, and also how our partners are responding to how these consumer behaviors have changed over the last 12 months. So we all know that last year was a pretty tough year for everyone, but it really did drive consumer behavior changes. So Australian advertising spend declined by 1.1 billion last year, but we saw within that search share of spend actually increased by 3%. And that might not seem particularly a big increase, but when you think that the market shrunk and we saw that increase, then it's particularly significant. And one particular category or sector within this that was booming and continues to boom is retail. So last year, online retail revenue totaled 50.4 billion, and this wasn't expected to be achieved for at least another 3 years. So we saw a huge increase in the number of people that were shopping online. We know that that was mainly out of necessity, with 1.3 million new shoppers online that hadn't shopped online before 2020. But the really interesting thing is that of those 1.3 million, 28% say that they're going to continue that behavior as they've become more comfortable with shopping online. And we're actually seeing this ring true in our clients' paid search conversion rates, where we're starting to see those conversion rates level out after the peaks we were seeing last year at levels that are higher than what we were seeing in 2019. So this is really meaning that retailers are considering how they can continue to invest into paid search as these new behaviors are staying. And I said search is a behavior, and Chris talked about this before. Search is everywhere. So search is a behavior, it's not a channel. And we talk about this a lot at Reprise. And also about being always relevant, not always on. And it's the intersection of these two which is really important, particularly as we talk about search behavior and the emerging search behaviors as well. So being relevant in expanding areas where consumers are exhibiting search behavior is really important, as behaviors in those search behaviors nuance depending on the environment in which they're searching. So looking at all the different areas where people are searching today and exhibiting that search behavior, it's not just about Google, it's not about information search, there's search behavior happening everywhere. So what are our partners doing in order to respond to this? So Google is all about creating meaningful and relevant consumer experiences, and Google are helping advertisers achieve this through the use of machine learning. So machine learning is actually reducing the barrier of entry for advertisers, large and small, to be able to advertise to consumers and create these meaningful relationships across Google's ecosystem. And that's because they are cutting through that complexity, looking at audience behaviors rather and surfacing ads across Google's environments, rather than looking at silo channels. And so we're seeing more and more of their ad formats that are focused around how people are behaving and serving ads across the environments rather than just within the individual platforms. And we've tried and tested many of these formats, and we're seeing that they're actually delivering outcomes for our clients. And most recently, they've launched Performance Max. So we haven't yet trialed this, but I don't know how much people know about Performance Max at the moment, but it's a completely new format that is completely performance-led. It's claimed to drive incremental growth and performance for clients, looking at audience behavior and serving ads across search, shopping, discovery, display, local, across the whole of the environment across Google. But as I said, it's not just about Google. So Amazon is growing, but it's not yet dominating in Australia like it is in other markets. So we've probably seen around 37% traffic growth on Amazon over the last year, but iconic Australian retailers are equally growing at the same rate or greater. So we can assume that Amazon aren't yet stealing revenue share from other Australian retailers, but it's only a matter of time. The key challenge for Amazon in Australia is that they haven't yet nailed convenience. And when we're talking about convenience, we're talking about same day or next day delivery consistently, and even their product range. And that's really going to be the turning point for Amazon. So if Amazon can distribute products to consumers quicker than any other retailers, more brands are going to want to sell through Amazon. If consumers can get what they want quicker and easier, they're going to want to buy through Amazon. And that's the intersection that's going to drive the growth of Amazon in Australia, is the convenience. And that's going to start, that's when brands are going to be embracing Amazon and consumers are going to start shifting their behavior to Amazon. But visual search, we're seeing behaviors emerge and evolve. And there's indications that people want to be searching, not using your typical words on a keyboard, but using visuals in order to search. 62% of Gen Z and millennials use visual search today. And that behavior is happening more so on Pinterest, meaning that there is greater opportunity to intersect that behavior with ad opportunities. Pinterest can now recognize 2.5 billion objects. So that's a huge opportunity for us to be intersecting those search behaviors and presenting brand's products. I think it's quite interesting now that we're all shooting our phones at QR codes as an everyday behavior because of COVID. It'd be interesting to see if we all become a lot more comfortable with just shooting our cameras at everyday objects in order to then embed this behavior around searching with visuals. So if visual search is a behavior and it's for your consumers and it's right for your brand, then what you need to be thinking about today is optimizing your site content, optimizing your product feeds, and think about optimizing your product, uploading your product categories to the likes of Pinterest and Google. And that's what's going to be ensuring that your products are triggering for these visual search trends. It's going to be both visual search for both Amazon and visual search. The evolution of this is going to come. You need to be thinking about these within your marketing mix and reflect your search lens to where your consumers are behaving. So I'm going to leave you with 3 takeaways. As I said, search is a behavior and those behaviors have changed. So make sure your budgets are matching those increased search demand. Search isn't just about Google. So make sure that you're diversifying your search strategy. And search is a behavior, it's not a channel. So don't plan search as a silo. Thanks. And I think we're going to hand over to the panel.
Thanks, Lou. That was great. We have had amazing speakers with so much information that we're running a little bit over time. So we will do a Q&A, but it'll be a little bit quicker than we're thinking. But so I ask all of you to do rapid fire responses for this as well. Jess, are you there? Background? Yeah, there you are. I'm going to mix up the order that we were going to cover things off. And Paul, I'm going to ask you to be short and sharp, which I know you like to elaborate. But and I know this could almost be a webinar in itself. But share of search seems to be the current hot topic in terms of particularly analysts fighting each other, whether it's a valid sort of proxy measure or not. What's your thought on share of search as a?
Look, it definitely works. It depends what you think it's working for. The way that I view it more is it's basically like a brand tracker on steroids. You've got way more data points. It's a great view of whether your business is working, whether you're going to be getting long-term growth. As your organic search goes up, definitely we see a link between your business results going up in the long term and following that. So 100%. If people are thinking, oh, it means that I need to do something to my search, no, it's an output tracker. If you think of it like a brand tracker, then I think that's the way that it gives you value.
And does that work for smaller brands who I guess can't afford always to do brand tracker? Is that
exactly.
Good alternative?
And, yeah, I think there's many that we work with who go, hey, we don't have a brand tracker, we can't use that for a long-term study. We go, no worries, we'll do this because sometimes people move trackers, sometimes people don't have coverage in that, they want to track something new. It's basically the world's biggest brand tracker sitting there for you to use for looking at longer-term value.
Perfect. Thank you. Very quick. Awesome. Krish, we learned a lot about you. You shared a lot of information, which thank you for that. We all know you snore now, and actually that people won't ever be told that a new puppy is going to be more painful than they think. It's like having children. So your sister wouldn't have probably changed her behavior anyway. Obviously, this is a new world of, I guess, adding a lot of data that we probably should have been adding to our world way before now. And I guess automating it through a programmatic sense is important. Do you see this flowing over to the sort of emerging areas of programmatic? So the audio, which is sometimes trickier to sort of patch together with other data sources, or digital out of home. Can it work across the broad gamut? Yeah.
Look, I mean, I think Paul's covered off the measurement piece in saying that it's a brand tracker that doesn't lend itself to one particular channel, but I'd say more for planning. I'd say if you do use search triggers to plan different like out of home and audio, I'd say it's best to mold the search data into the shape of the channel through your brand strategy, because search is a very personal and intimate thing, and digital out of home is absolutely not. It's like a mass medium, and it's so you kind of have to use the search signals appropriately, because otherwise, and collate the search inputs at the correct aggregate level, because otherwise you'll just end up butchering the data around the channel. So yeah,
I guess sort of some of the retail media type models try and play on that a little bit as well in some of their offerings. A question that came through from the audience, and probably both for Jess and Lou, tactical ways of people making the most of Olympics. Any thoughts on? Sounds like a bit of brand hijacking there. Someone wants to know how they can make the most of using search during the Olympics. Any thoughts on that area?
I'll echo what Chris said into the chat in terms of, search can be really helpful going up into any kind of seasonal event, Olympics being one of them. So seeing what kind of, within kind of Olympics, what's trending within there as well. So Google Trends can be really helpful to see, to kind of stay ahead of and stay current with what consumers are kind of turning to Google to ask around that particular category. It can help stay relevant up to there as well.
Lou, any thoughts there for clients?
Yeah, and I think the key thing is what Jess said. It's just staying on top of what people are doing, what they're searching for, but making sure that it's really relevant to your brand. So don't over try. Like, make sure that it's really relevant to your brand, and you're connecting with your consumers and in that mindset that they have and the way that they're consuming. So yeah, using Google Trends to really keep on top of what's rising and what's relevant right now.
I'll keep you online. One more question for you that came through earlier, and it might be too early to answer this in terms of the life of sort of the commerce search play. Branded search in commerce, like for clients, do they need to be buying their own brand keywords? Is it, I guess the approach for commerce, is it very different to your traditional search?
Yeah, this is a very topical subject. We've got lots of clients talking about this at the moment. It particularly came up last year because clients are looking at ways that they can make their budget more efficient, and looking at how they could optimize a in-channel as well as a cross-channel within the budgets that they had. But definitely going into this year, brands are actually and retailers are understanding the value of being present, and it's not just about the bottom of the funnel and getting that conversion, but actually the value of being present and what that does to the entire customer journey. So they're looking at ways to find incremental budget because they're seeing that growth opportunity rather than taking budget away from areas that they're already investing in search.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think I'll finish on. We won't have time to cover it all, but I guess thinking about how search is expanding, what that means for marketing budgets. Do we suddenly scrape back some of our paid media budget into our area that has gone to CX, or even, I guess, old retail sort of rental properties? So it'll be interesting to see how that all goes into marketing budgets. Thank you all for joining us today. That's great information. As I said, we'll share the recording early next week, and we'll share the decks that we can probably next Tuesday. So everyone who's registered will get a link. We've got two events coming up. One is a member briefing in a week or so, looking at the new food and beverage code that the AANA has released. So sometimes people can go to sleep with code type information, but anyone who is buying, selling any sort of media, particularly that would have any sort of food and beverage type of advertising, there's some pretty significant changes coming along in terms of classifications of food, as well as advertising to children in that space. So Tiff's going to share a link for that. So hopefully some of you can join us there, or at least your reg people can if you have them. The other, where are we going here? I have stopped sharing, but I'll talk to this. Our next live event is our AdOps conference in a couple of weeks. So we will see hopefully some of you there in person, half-day conference, talking about all the latest and greatest in terms of identity, transparency, all those sexy topics. We've got a fabulous panel on female leadership in ad tech as well, which I'm really excited about. Great opportunity to ask questions and go sort of deeper into the weeds of what's happening in the industry, how how we're continuing to evolve and rebuild the offerings there. So, and then there's also drinks, music, wine, women and song as well at the end. So hopefully we'll see many of you there. Thanks again to the panel today. Hope you have all had a fun time.